and welcome to The Public Good. This is Sam Magavern from the Partnership for the Public Good, or PPG, which unites 280 community organizations working to build a better Buffalo. Delighted to be joining you every Tuesday at 7 p.m. here on WUFO, Mix 1080 AM and Power 96.5 FM, and every Tuesday at 1 p.m. on Facebook Live. Today we'll be joined by our two newest partner organizations here at PPG, and they each have very exciting events coming up this week, so we're going to be telling you about those. Before we do that, I want to remind you not to forget to follow PPG on Facebook and Twitter, and of course you can always get great information on our website, ppgbuffalo.org. The Public Good is sponsored in part by Univera Healthcare, real people who really care. You can get videos from past shows on our Facebook page and on our YouTube channel. A few quick announcements for you before we get started. This weekend, Community Action Organization is hosting a conference on Better Schools, Better Neighborhoods. It includes workshops and information sharing on restoring communities, from starting a land trust to funding block improvements, addressing zombie and foreclosed and abandoned properties and lots. That event is this Saturday, October 13th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at East High School, 820 Northampton Street. Registration is free. You can call 332-3773 for more information. It's Community Action Organization's Conference on Better Schools, Better Neighborhoods this Saturday, 332-3773 to learn more. Next week, right here at the Buffalo Commons, we'll be hosting a breakfast workshop on community university partnerships. Community members and groups are invited to come and learn tools and approaches for working with universities and researchers on local challenges and solutions. That is going to be here at PPG, 617 Main Street in Buffalo. It's Friday, October 19th, 9 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. You can RSVP to Buffalo Commons at cornell.edu. Space is limited, so you do have to RSVP for that. You can find out more on our website. But that is Buffalo Commons Workshop on Community University Partnerships. All right, with that, I want to welcome our first partner of the day. It is the Buffalo Niagara LGBTQ History Project, and we've got co-founders Adrienne Hill and Anna Gruich here with us today. Adrienne and Anna, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having us.
So we want to make sure we hear about the exciting event this weekend, and then we'll kind of back up and hear more about the history project in general. But for starters, tell us about She Walked Here.
Okay, She Walked Here is actually a series of events we've been doing since, I think, July to commemorate, and I actually brought a copy, Boots of Leather, Slippers of Gold. This is my well-worn copy. It's about, I think it's actually 25 years old this year, and it's the most comprehensive oral history we have of working class lesbian bar life prior to Stonewall. And it took place right here in Buffalo. It's an oral history of working class bar lesbians here in Buffalo that was conducted between the late 70s and the early 90s. So we wanted to commemorate this book in a number of ways. For this particular event, it's a street tour. We wanted people to sort of walk the streets of where these bars were and meditate on, what took place there, maybe comparing what was there in the 40s and 50s to what is actually on those streets now, and what that tells us about lesbian history, LGBTQ history, and the roles that the LGBTQ community have played here in Buffalo historically.
So nuts and bolts, if folks are interested in going on this tour, what do they need to do?
Well, there's a couple of ways to get involved. We strongly suggest that you RSVP ahead of time. If you look at the poster here, there is a website. It's bit.ly, that's bit.ly/SheWalkedHereTour. There's just a brief sort of Google form that you can sign in for, and that'll give you a little bit more information. You can also just come to the tour the day of. You don't have to sign up ahead of time. The tours will start at noon. We're actually going to have 3 tours going off that day, one at noon, one at 12:30, one at 1 p.m. They all meet in front of the Erie County Central Library. So you just sign in. It's a sliding scale admission. We suggest a $10 donation, but we're not going to turn anybody away for lack of funds. And then
there's some walking, but there's also an option for folks who don't want to do any walking, can do one version where you just drive around in the shuttle, right?
Correct. I think we should maybe warn people ahead of time that the sites are somewhat far-flung. Most of them are downtown. There are a couple in the Fruit Belt, and there are a couple on the Michigan Avenue Historical Corridor. So it's a lot of walking. For most of the tours, it's going to be a combination of shuttling people to the farthest along sites and then walking through the rest. That's going to be the 12 and the 12:30 tour. But if you are not comfortable with walking long distances, we do have a shuttle-only tour that leaves at 1 p.m.
Awesome. And then associated with the tour, there's also a sort of book talk or conversation that's happening as well. Is that right?
Correct, yeah. So much of our tour, obviously the entire tour, is commemoration of Boots of Leather, Slippers of Gold, an oral history created by Liz Kennedy and Madeline Davis. So Liz Kennedy will be in town in October, and we, LGBTQ History Project, is organizing this informal talk, community talk with Liz at the Grindhouse on Tuesday at 5:30 or 6 p.m.
It's 6 p.m. at Grindhouse, Tuesday the 16th.
Yeah.
Great. So if folks want to meet the author of the book that inspires the tour, she'll be in town and available at Grindhouse for conversation. Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little more about the History Project in general and why you started it and why you think there's something really important about Buffalo and its role in history and this particular history.
Okay. Well, the History Project started a little bit more than 2 years ago. It was co-founded by me and by Bridge Rauch, another local LGBTQ activist. And it was inspired by a lot of things. You know, for me, I had been teaching, before I moved to Buffalo 6 years ago, I'd been teaching LGBTQ studies in Northwestern Ohio, actually. And during the course of my teaching there, I started to realize that we have a very specific way of teaching LGBTQ history in this country. That it's something that happened in New York City and San Francisco and maybe LA, maybe Chicago, but rarely that. And it's just this thing that happened on major coastal cities.
Mm-hmm.
And for LGBTQ people who live in smaller cities, in the Midwest, in the South, in small towns, you know, if they even figure into that history at all, it's assumed that they were just sort of waiting to see what people in big coastal cities will do.
Yeah.
And we haven't done as much work to record the survival techniques of LGBTQ people in smaller communities and the communities they've built and the movements they've built. And I think it's important to do that because I think it's important for people, I think it's important for LGBTQ people who stay in their communities of origin to know that there are people who did this before them and that there are things that they can learn. And one of the ways I often talk to people about this issue is a woman, Carol Spesser, who works with the History Project. She's from Buffalo. She's a 70-year-old lesbian activist, likes to talk about hometown politics. And the idea is that if we talk about, you know, the sort of official account of LGBTQ history takes place in these big cities where people would move to be able to live their LGBTQ lives. Or if they were from those big cities, they were so big that they provided anonymity so that they didn't necessarily have to encounter their families or their communities of origin while being in that city. But, you know, Buffalo is a smaller city. It's a place where most of the people who live there have lived there their whole lives. And so coming out in a city like Buffalo means that you have to be able to live your life as an LGBTQ person while knowing that you may also encounter your family, your school, your workplace.
You're going to bump into Aunt Ida at the Tops or the Wegmans, and you need to be ready for that encounter that you wouldn't have in New York City.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're not necessarily, the goal is not necessarily to build this autonomous LGBTQ identity. The goal is trying to figure out how to integrate that identity into every other aspect of your life. And I think that something like the Buffalo Niagara LGBTQ History Project can give an account of how people learn to do that. And that can be useful not just for people living in Buffalo today, but for LGBTQ people all across the country.
And so the book that you've been referencing and that you showed us is one sort of gold mine of material, but obviously there are a lot of other sources of material that I gather you're sort of collecting and archiving or sharing with people. Maybe just give us a little sense of sort of some of the other sources that you draw on in your history project.
Well, yeah, I mean, preceding our history project, there is obviously the Madeline Davis LGBTQ History Archive at Buff State.
Mm-hmm.
And it is truly a remarkable collection. Madeline Davis initiated founding of the archive, kept it at her home for years, and finally found home for it at Buff State. Was it in early 2000s or?
Early 2000s, yeah.
But nonetheless, of course, all archives have multiple limits in addition to their wealth. When we started doing this work, kind of being clueless at that point, just understanding theoretically what the importance of such a project was, we found out that lots of people, elders of different backgrounds, had immense and valuable archives at their homes, under their bed, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right. Boxes and boxes of photographs, some video material. Incredible. And for a number of reasons, they haven't or feel reluctant to just surrender their these are lives they lived, right, to an institution.
Right.
What happens then. So what we try to do is create and cultivate relationships with them and facilitate digitizing and gradual surrendering of these archives to the official big archive. But not only that, there is one really complex issue is what makes queer history and what makes queer archive. Is it documents? Is it big events? But how much of it is actually the stuff of daily life? Right. Bars, dance parties, personal correspondence. Sure. Close music, whatnot, and how do you archive that? Relationships, patterns of relationships, emotions, which are not really legible in mainstream and are not still in mainstream culture, right? So how do you archive that? So we, other than more conventional archiving, collecting work, we try to create these immersive community events which bring the material and stories which are unrecorded, largely, to the community, create different kinds of events, incorporate music, video footage, and so forth. And so the material lives.
A perfect example of what you're describing. So urge people to check out the street tour. She Walked Here, street tour of historic lesbian bar sites, happening this Saturday. Find out more information on the website, RSVP in advance if you can. And just want to thank Adrian and Anna for sharing this with us, and welcome to PPG. Thanks for becoming partners. We're delighted to have you and excited about the work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we will now move to our second guest. And we are delighted to have members of the Inclusive Theater of Western New York here with us today. We've got Steve Brockman, Marilyn Aronson-Scott, and Carling Berry. So thank you for the three of you for being. And you also have a big event coming up, an opening of a play.
Yes,
so tell us about that.
First of all, thank you for having us. We are opening our inaugural full-length play. It's called
And where will you put the things you sing?
And we're very excited about it. The writer is a local Buffalo writer, Baroness Von Smith, and she's written a humorous, touching, and I think important play, and it turns perceptions kind of around at a certain point. There's a little bit of a surprise at the end. But Steve has been wonderful, and John Profeta, both very talented Buffalo actors, and Jess is the actress who plays a young woman in the play, and she's also wonderful. And they're funny, and they have good chemistry.
Very much.
Yeah,
I'll let her go on about
that.
Give us a little sneak preview of the plot. So what happens in this play?
Okay, well, so I play a criminal defense lawyer named Nick Mowright. So Nick and Jessica plays his sister Erica. They live in their parents' house. Erica is a highly functioning autistic individual. Nick has recently just finished rehab, he was in a motorcycle accident and is now wheelchair bound. So he has that difficulty going on in his life, and he's trying to navigate having his sister back from a group home that she had been living with, and navigating this new life with her. At the same time, Alex, who is played by John Profeta, Alex and Nick are engaged to be married, and they're dealing with Alex's increasing, how do I put this, activism, environmental activism bordering on incredible radicalism / criminal activity, and so that kind of sets up what goes on, and I don't want to give away too much of what happens, but that's,
Then I think that's enough to
It's a
give
fun
people
show.
some incentive to
Yeah.
come and find out what happens.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about, well, first just give us the details, so if folks want to see this play, where and when and how.
Starts Thursday night at the Alleyway Theater,
Mhm.
and it runs until October 28th. And it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday at 8, and Sunday at 2.
All right.
And Thursdays are pay what you can,
Yes.
because we want to allow access to anyone to come, whether they have the means or not.
Wonderful.
Very
So
important.
Thursdays are pay what you can,
Yep.
starting this Thursday.
Yes.
Alleyway Theater, right next to Shays Performing Arts,
Yep.
right across the street from us here in
Because
downtown Buffalo.
We mean
Yep.
inclusion, including
Uh-huh.
don't have the money.
Yeah, all right. So tell us a little bit about inclusive theater in general and
Well,
why
I-
you started it, what it's all about.
I met Amy Levesque when I moved to Buffalo just about 5 years ago, and I actually was volunteering, and she came to speak to the group, and I just loved her. She's just a wonderful, warm, inclusive person. That's how she lives her life, and both of us had people in our families who have disabilities, and we both were very much on the same page about radical inclusion. And so we wanted to start an inclusion revolution, and we thought, let's do it through theater, because we also had in common our love of theater. I've been going to shows from the time I was a kid. It's always been my favorite thing to do, whether the theater was Broadway, because I lived outside of New York until 5 years ago, but even the theaters above the stores, and I've gone to many of those,
Yeah.
I just love theater, and so does she, and she's
So
done a
tell
lot
us
of work with theater.
What does radical inclusion mean to you?
Well, there are no conditions on it. The criteria for inclusion should be breathing.
Mhm.
You're alive.
Mhm.
And what we do that might be different than what other theaters do is because we have personal experience, we know how to work with people who need accommodations. Many people, even in everyday life, don't know how to do that, so we do. Also, I think many theaters don't have the resources, so they don't have the knowledge or the resources, and everyone's working on tight margins.
Sure.
So it's not that they're doing anything wrong, we understand.
Mhm.
But we also want to create a space for the regular community and for the person with a disability. We want people to be together in the same space.
Yeah.
We don't believe in tokenism. We don't believe in telling people they're good when they're not.
Mhm.
We're not going to put somebody on stage that isn't good.
Right.
We don't feel that that's doing anybody any favors. So if somebody wants to act, and we give acting classes, and they're taught by some top actors in Buffalo.
Mhm.
We gave an improv class last year, taught by one of the top improv actors in Buffalo. He's been doing it many years. And honestly, two of the people who were the best were one young man with autism who had been with us for about 3 years, and we never thought improv with autism.
Mhm.
And one young man who's a writer, he does not have a disability, who's been with us since the beginning. He was a student of Amy's at Buffalo State, and he's a talented writer, and he's very shy and quiet.
Mhm.
The two of them were hilarious.
Uh-huh.
They were, if you had money to bet on which two would not do well with improv,
Yeah.
I would have been on those two.
Yeah.
And they were hilarious.
Tell us a little bit about the experience of doing this play. Lessons learned or experiences that were particularly interesting or striking.
having to be in a wheelchair for 3 hours at a time during rehearsals is an interesting, and I was glad we got that in real early. And I asked that we, make sure that I had time to really work with it. And first we had a wheelchair that didn't have footrests.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that was an issue because, come to find out, if you're in there and your legs are not supposed to be mobile at all, I'm just sitting there and kind of going back and forth anyways without even really realizing. So I'm like, we got to make sure that feet don't touch the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So getting that in. It's actually kind of tiring. Think sitting for like hours at a time, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, I gotta get my wallet out of here, and it just, it's a bit of a pain in the rear. So, but that was an interesting challenge. I think, that's that. I can say that from
other
my
thoughts about this particular play and the experience of mounting
How
it.
about you, Carmen?
Right.
What's your experience been?
My experience as well, I've never done like stage managing or assistant directing, so that is
And she's
exciting.
really good at it. But you have theater
Usually I've done-
experience.
like acting and
Uh-huh.
working with people with disabilities in theater. I've done a lot of work with that. So this is like, and with the Fringe Festival in Toronto, so this is like a whole new experience, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And I found inclusive theater from Facebook actually,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't believe it. I was looking to like do some volunteering in the Buffalo or Niagara area, and I came across it, and I was like, this is perfect. And then I met you and Amy, and it was like instant right away. Like we were like talking for like
Kismet.
hours.
Uh-huh.
It's like we
Nice.
knew each other,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
just felt right.
She's
because
been
we're-
such a gift to us.
we're in the same
Yeah.
ideas of like giving access and opportunities
Mhm.
and educating like the public
Mm-hmm.
about how inclusiveness is so important,
Yeah.
and giving like opportunities and experiences to try new things that helps with people's self-esteem, coming together, friendships, like so many good things come out of giving access and opportunities and experiences.
Tell us a little bit about why theater. So if you're pursuing an agenda of radical inclusion, what does theater have to bring that maybe some other forms of activity might not?
It's a great teaching tool, both for the actors who are participating with us, even the actors who teach with us. Their eyes have been open. We also do a service learning project at Buffalo State, so we have their students come in and they have dinner with us. We get pizza and they interview our actors, and several of whom have disabilities, and a few of them, the feedback has been tremendous. They just never knew anyone with a disability or what their lives were like. And that was so important to us. We were so thrilled. So we're back there for a second year. They'll be coming to visit us, and they're coming to opening night, the students.
Nice.
So Amy and I will be there tomorrow, I think, to speak with the class, and then they'll be with us opening night. So that's been good, but it really changed a lot of people. So it's a great teaching tool, and it's a career path for people that may not have been given the opportunity to know what kind of jobs are available. We also want to extend access to people without disabilities who maybe grew up in an area of deprivation. We have a lot of immigrants here, and some of them come from circumstances that were very, very difficult. We would love for them to come to our writing group. We run a writing group. That's been going on since we started, just to tell their stories. We're going to be doing a festival of shorts this spring.
So inclusive theater has a focus on disability, but not just disability.
It's really not a focus on disability. We will provide accommodations even for people who are coming to us from another country. We'll try to work with them with whatever their needs are. They might have, I hate the word special, but they may have specific needs in terms of language and something, and we'll find ways to work around it. That's why we exist. We want to invite people in who may not have just had the opportunity before.
So radical inclusion, maybe this gets at what you mean by radical inclusion. Radical
Right.
inclusion literally means everybody.
Not just people with disabilities,
Yeah.
and it helps everybody.
We all have needs.
Right,
Yeah.
We
and
all
we're
have-
just
yeah.
doing what we think everyone should do, is love and support one another.
Uh-huh.
That's what we're about.
All right, so give us the details on the play again. So for folks who are interested in seeing the play, tell them how to.
It starts, its opening night is Thursday. We're having a gala on Saturday
Yeah.
at 7 o'clock. There'll be some spirits and
Cheese.
of
Friendly spirits, I
the
have like
liquid
that.
kind.
Yeah.
And we'll have hors d'oeuvres, and that'll go for about 45 minutes
Yeah.
to an hour, and then the play. So, and that is twice our normal price, which is $50. Our normal price is $25.
Okay.
And on
For
Thursday,
seniors?
pay what you can.
Yeah, and 20 for students.
And 20 for
25
students.
for
Right.
regular.
Right, 25 is our
Admission.
regular admission.
And as you mentioned, Thursday night is pay what you can night.
That's right, because we're inclusive.
All right. Well,
Thank you.
good luck with the play. Break
Thank
a
you.
leg. We're excited that it's going on. So, want to thank the members of Inclusive Theater for being with us today on the Public Good. Next week on the Public Good, we'll be talking with Bridget O'Brien. She is the Food Services Director for the Buffalo Public Schools. We'll be talking about their efforts to bring good, fresh food to their students, including the exciting Chef Challenge event that's coming up later in October with Cooking for School Food. So be sure to tune in for that, and tune into the Public Good every Tuesday at 7 p.m. on Power 96.5 FM and Mix 1080 AM and 1 p.m. on Facebook Live. Thank you very much.